What's happened in this referendum, and that is it. Scotland has voted no in this referendum on independence. The result in Fife has taken the no campaign over the line, and the official result of this referendum is a no.
And put the gowans fine. We've wandered many's a weary fate, since all lang syne. For all lang syne, my dear, for all lang syne, we'll take couple kindness yet, for the sake of all lang syne.
And so it was that on a cold grey September morning in 2014, it seemed that the dream of an independent Scotland had finally died, laid waste by the might of the British establishment and its cheerleaders in the BBC and the corporate press. The Yes campaign had come so close, and in some private polling initiated by 10 Downing Street were apparently standing at 53% and on the brink of an historic victory. Only a last gasp, unprecedented intervention by the Prime Minister David Cameron, along with Ed Miliband and Nick Clegg, with promises and vows of Devo-Max, managed to turn the surge around and secure a no victory. For the Yes campaigners, it seemed like the end of the road, that the dream of independence had slipped away. No had won. And as David Cameron stood on the steps of 10 Downing Street, only hours after the vote had been declared, it was clear that Scotland was now to be placed firmly back in its box.
But I have long believed that a crucial part missing from this national discussion is England. We have heard the voice of Scotland, and now the millions of voices of England must also be heard. The question of English votes for English laws, the so-called West Lothian question, requires a decisive answer. So just as Scotland will vote separately in the Scottish Parliament on their issues of tax, spending and welfare, so too England, as well as Wales and Northern Ireland, should be able to vote on these issues. And all this must take place in tandem with and at the same pace as the settlement for Scotland.
But even as David Cameron was making his evil pronouncements on the steps of Downing Street, not everyone was getting the message, for there was one young woman who was determined to keep the flag flying and the torch of Scottish independence burning.
The change is coming round. Not burning bridges, it's not a fight. I'm just looking out for all these things of mine. Turn the tables, you know my feet are on the ground. And I can't look back now, 'cause the change is coming round. Oh yeah, 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 it's coming round. It's coming round. It's coming round. Oh yeah.
An incredible, dynamic, growing movement for change in our country. A truly national movement seeking to build a renewed and a reinvigorated Scotland. A movement with a clear message for Labour, the Tories and the Liberal Democrats. Power over Scotland doesn't lie with Westminster anymore. It lies in the hands of the Scottish people, and that is where it is going to stay.
It quickly became evident that, far from placing Scotland in its box, the entire referendum campaign experience had ignited a political flame in Scotland, the likes of which had never before been seen. With a population fully engaged in the political conversation of Scotland's future, the outcome of the 2015 UK general election seemed inevitable, and so it turned out to be. No less than 56 seats from a possible 59 in Scotland were won by the SNP, with swings in some seats that simply went off the charts. Nothing like it had ever before been witnessed in Scottish political history. And as the 56 SNP MPs took their seats in Westminster to commence battle with David Cameron's majority Tory government, it was clear that the new battle lines for Scotland's political future had now been drawn. A number of opinion polls prior to the SNP's announcement of an independence referendum showed that most Scots would have happily settled for Devo-Max, a type of semi-independent status where Scotland has full control over all its income and expenditure and is effectively self-governing, save for matters concerning defence, foreign policy and macroeconomic policy, which would remain at Westminster. The Devo-Max option was conveniently explained to the people of Scotland in a BBC documentary shortly before the referendum vote.
There's a real possibility Scotland will reinvent its relationship with the rest of the UK with a referendum on independence. The SNP insist it's time to fly solo. But there is another option on the table. It's called Devo-Max. The idea is that Scotland remains in the UK, but is given tax-raising powers and responsibility for virtually everything, bar defence and foreign policy. It keeps the Queen and it keeps the pound. It's not independent, but it's pretty damn close, which is why it's controversial.
This is essentially the maximum amount of powers we can have in terms of devolution, and also the ability of Scotland to raise taxes in Scotland to pay for the services we provide. And I fear that if we don't have an alternative to independence in the form of some kind of fiscal autonomy, Devo-Max, then I think the SNP will continue to do well. I believe that this keeps us in the Union, but it also means that we transform the relationship of Scotland within the Union, but also means that Scotland will travel much, much further down the devolution road.
But alas, Devo-Max was not an option on the referendum ballot paper. Or so it seemed. With a number of opinion polls now showing the Yes campaign had taken the lead, all bets were off and Devo-Max was, apparently, back on the table. Now in clear breach of the Edinburgh Agreement and the Electoral Commission rules, where such last-minute bribes were forbidden, the BBC state broadcaster and the corporate press were telling the voters of Scotland that a vote for no was essentially now a vote for Devo-Max.
OK, let's assume that you do all come together and you agree these proposals. Let's call them Devo-Max, for example. Now, Devo-Max, a third option, is something that the coalition in this Better Together group, to which you belong throughout, didn't want. Now it seems you are offering, effectively, the voters a chance to vote yes or for Devo-Max.
Yeah. Although Labour and Gordon Brown have been the driving force behind this new sort of Devo-Max package being offered to Scots if they vote no, the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives have clearly indicated they will back it.
But no sooner had the dust settled on the referendum result than the Unionist parties, aided and abetted by the UK corporate press, began to backslide, claiming that promises of Devo-Max had never actually been made or even implied during the referendum campaign. The Smith Commission, set up by the Tory Lib Dem coalition government to agree a package of new powers to transfer to the Scottish Parliament, should have had an easy job. The people of Scotland had been told by the state broadcaster that a no vote would deliver
Devo-Max.
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 Every single amendment proposed by the SNP to the Smith Commission Scotland Bill, which would have given Scotland much more control over its own affairs, was voted down by a Westminster Government that has but a single MP in Scotland.
On overruling MPs, it's very interesting, Mr Speaker, because on the Scotland Bill, 58 of 59 Scottish MPs have voted for that legislation to be strengthened, and they've been outvoted by English. Not content with outvoting Scottish MPs elected on a mandate to strengthen the Scotland Bill, he is now going to introduce second-class status for us as MPs elected from Scotland on issues which can impact on the Scottish budget.
The pre-referendum promises of
Devo-Max
were nothing more than a cynical ploy that amounted to no more than a con on the people of Scotland, and especially upon those who believed in Devo-Max as the most desirable political settlement for Scotland. Westminster's attitude towards Scotland and its people is probably best summed up by one of the BBC's most experienced political journalists, Andrew Neil, who said before the referendum vote, "If you vote no, you massively change the balance of power, and they will not only give you nothing, but will probably take powers away from the Scottish Parliament." In the end, it will not be for David Cameron's Tory government or any UK government to decide when enough powers have been transferred to Scotland from Westminster. That decision rests with the Scottish people and with them alone. The settled will of the Scottish people is exactly that, the Scottish people, and not any Westminster government.